Hello, I'm going to show you how to make a pie crust. What we want to do first is make sure we have everything together. This is basically off of a recipe from Better Homes and Gardens, their basic cookbook. And they show you how to make a crust for a single or double pastry pie. So first thing we want is a deep dish pie container. And this is Pyrex. You get this at any grocery store. I go with the deep dish 9-inch pies. And we want a big mixing bowl. We want something to stir the dry ingredients with. I use a whisk. We need a pastry cutter. I like the ones that don't have the wires. This isn't sharp, so you can actually run your fingers on it. It won't hurt. My hands, by the way, are washed and scrubbed clean. But this holds its shape and it's a really good pastry cutter. Some flour. And we have our flour measured out. And this is the important part, is you got to measure everything out just right. Once you do that, it should be okay. So I got 1 cup of flour and another 1/4 cup. So it's 1 1/4 cups of flour. We also have a 1/3 stick of shortening. I used to buy the shortening in a tub, but it was such a pain to measure it out. And I find the sticks are so easy, so I get the sticks. And last but not least, a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. For a double pastry pie, it's 2 full cups of flour, a full teaspoon of salt, and 2/3 or twice as much of the shortening. And the last ingredient here is water, about a 1/4 cup of water for a single pastry pie, and about a 1/2 cup of water for a two crust pie. I go with the flour. This is a part that I sometimes miss, so I want to get the salt in there. Okay. Now I want to mix this up. Flour and salt until the ingredients are pretty well mixed. Doesn't have to be perfect, but enough so you don't have any salty spots in the crust. Then I take my shortening, and you can actually, if you want, you can sort of pre-cut it. It may make it a little easier. Just throw it right into there, right into the flour like that. Now we take our pastry cutter and we go chop it up. And we take...
Chop up what?
So what we're doing is we're chopping the shortening into the flour. Basically, it's cutting that shortening into the flour. So when we threw the shortening in, we just saw these pieces of shortening sitting on top of flour. But right now we're cutting it up. And after a certain point, they say that you should have pea-sized pieces. And so basically I just keep cutting it until it looks like nothing more is changing. So basically what we've done is we've cut up the shortening into the flour salt mixture, and we have the basic ingredient for crust. Okay? And then we add water, just a little bit at a time. This is about a 1/2 cup of water, or about a 1/4 cup of water, I'm sorry. About a 1/4 cup of water. And so I'm sort of adding it just a little at a time here. And you stir it quite a bit between the additions. And after a while, you're going to start to notice that things congeal. you don't want to add all the water at once, because at a certain point when we get the right consistency, we want to stop. Sometimes I find I have to actually add more water than the recipe calls for, but sometimes less. But I'll show you when to make that determination. This may be one of those times I actually have to add a little more water. I've added that full quarter cup. Now I'm starting to feel things coming together. The chunks look a little bigger. They're starting to come together sort of like clay. So I add just a little more water. And then at a certain point, it's all going to come together. Now you can also notice that when you do this, it's going to start to clean the sides of the bowl. And that's fine too. Because that stuff's going to, the stuff that's stuck on the bowl is going to want to stick more to the rest of the pastry. Okay? Now, at a certain point, and this is where the art comes in. Is this like, see how it's sort of almost doughy? I could add a little more water, but I think I'll just add, I think that's pretty good right there. And then the less water that you add, the flakier the crust will be. So I'm going to go with that. Now watch what I'm going to do here. Again, my hands are clean. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to form it into a ball. You don't want to play with it too much, because the more you play with it, the tougher it's going to get. So there we go. So I made a little ball, just like that. See that? Okay, now, put that out of the way. What I like to use for my surface, we have a marble countertop, so I use a cookie sheet. I wet the bottom of it a little bit so it sticks, and this is perfect. I sprinkle a little flour, which I have in a separate container, and I push this down and I press it down into a little disc. Okay, now I go ahead and I flour that side a little bit, and I'm adding a lot of flour because you don't want it to stick to surfaces. And I flour that a little bit. Then I take my rolling pin, which has been cold. You don't need to have a cold rolling pin, but I think it helps keep it from sticking a little bit. And then you just sort of start to roll it out. And again, add a little bit of flour to that side. And then I'll take it and I'll flip it. Add a little bit of flour to that side, and then I'll go for it again. And again, the flour keeps it from sticking, and if I didn't add the flour, then I'd be doing this and it would rip up a piece with it. So you don't want to have it get to that point. It gets to a point where I no longer flip it over, I just sort of roll it out. And then, see, that's stuck right there to that. So that's sort of what happens when you don't have enough flour. Okay, so now we pretty much have the size that we want. I'm rolling up a little bit of the crust, just like that. And you just use this to lift it right up gently and right onto the plate like that. And that is that. Put that away, which is the rolling pin. Don't need that anymore. Press it in a little bit, just like that. And you have a pie crust. Now, if there are rips anywhere, you can use a little bit of water and just sort of run your finger over and seal them up. Or you can use some of the excess as a patch, and I'll show you what I do with the excess. So basically, I take a pair of kitchen shears, and I have a pair of shears I use just for the kitchen. And I just cut around the pie like that. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Again, you know, we got some cuts there. You can sort of press that if you want to add a little water to, you know, healing a crust with water is not perfect, but you can usually, you know, get it good enough. There you go. And that, I just sort of press that up a little bit. And to close this out, I guess I would say that what is this going to be for? It's going to be for a pumpkin pie. And I use Libby's pumpkin in there. And for me, it's I just follow the label directions, you know, on the can.